Welcome to another episode of the Journeys of Not So Ordinary People podcast, your personal, professional, and career development podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Dr. Dave Peltz, and along with me is my esteemed colleague, Dr. Joe Hamlett. How are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good, Dr. Dave. How are you doing?
I'm doing most excellent. Most excellent.
Okay.
if you are a returning viewer and listener, thank you for returning. If you're new to the podcast, we hope you enjoy this one. Uh, Joe and I spent a good hour just fumbling around trying to think about what we were going to do, and we came up with the topic of "Are you uncomfortable?" So, Joe, I'm going to throw it over to you. Joe, are you uncomfortable?
Dave, I'm not necessarily uncomfortable. I am more annoyed.
Oh,
Uh, just, just again, you just mentioned it. It took us a while to come up with this topic. Not that we don't have a lot of things in our heads and would like to talk about, but we wanted to do something that was, again, meaningful to our audience, that they could possibly relate to, or that could possibly help them in their future endeavors, whether it's personal, professional, or career development. So, the topic we came up with is, are you uncomfortable? So, the honest answer is that you should be somewhat uncomfortable in a lot of situations and a lot of instances, because my immediate thought, if somebody asks me that and I say, oh, yeah, I'm comfortable, then I start thinking, am I moving forward? Am I growing? Am I developing? Because if I'm comfortable, so that means that everything is copacetic. Everything is status quo. I'm not challenging myself. I'm not potentially living up to my full potential. So that's what I think of when I think of, are you uncomfortable? And like I say, in most cases, I am, just because I'm doing things that maybe I'm not used to, or maybe that I haven't done before, or again, that whole growth mindset of the only way I'm going to be comfortable with something is if I get to know about it, learn about it, experience it. So that's what I think of when you ask the question, are you uncomfortable? And like I said, my answer in most cases will be yes, just because I am not going to sit back and just accept the status quo, or to be in a position where things are just going great. So,
right. Those are a lot of good points, Joe. We're not talking about being uncomfortable like, oh, I'm going to go just sit down in the middle of a campfire and see how that feels. Not that kind of uncomfortable. Or,
right.
I don't know. Some people do this throughout the world. They go into the ocean when it's freezing cold
Yep.
and go for a swim. That not that type of uncomfortable. I mean, we're talking about that uncomfortable in your own skin or in the situation or the environment. Again, not fire or freezing water environment, but just like, your personal environment or your professional environment. So, yeah, I agree 100% with what you said. I mean, if you are comfortable or too comfortable, are you complacent? Are you status quo? And are you just like we've said so many times, just drifting down that river in that boat and not taking control of your personal life or your career or your own personal or professional development? So being uncomfortable is important. Are you stepping outside it? Some of the questions we think about are you stepping outside of your comfort zone? Are you confronting those things that are uncomfortable or are you avoiding them?
Right. Yep.
I know when I was young, I was kind of a shy kid and I got out of that shyness by, in eighth grade, I went into a drama class and I was terrified because, being in front of people, speaking and having them laugh at me and make fun of me. But I embraced it and I enjoyed that. And that helped me with being able to talk to people. And then I realized I really do enjoy teaching and sharing ideas and discussing topics with people. And, going back to the public speaking thing, we've said this a few times recently. There was a comedian who once said, people would there are a lot of people who would rather die than stand up and talk in front of people.
Yeah.
It's like I don't know. I prefer the breathing, living world, but okay. But being uncomfortable like that is challenging yourself. Whether it's at home with new projects. Like I've got a couple of projects that I'm uncomfortable with. I'm pretty much procrastinating, overthinking, over researching, delaying it because I'm so uncomfortable with it. It's like I'm afraid I'm going to do something wrong, and mess it
Right.
up. And I'm just like, oh well, there's 3 days worth of work for nothing. So,
Well, you touched on the public speaking, and for me, that was probably my toughest or hardest thing to overcome. Is being uncomfortable speaking in front of people, and that all back in high school when you had to do speech, I
mm,
failed speech the first time just because I was so uncomfortable getting in front of people, standing in front of people, and telling a story.
mm,
And so, like you said, I didn't take a drama class or anything like that. It was just mainly continuing to be uncomfortable and to continue to do it over and over again. And not to say that I'm a master at it at all, public
right,
speaking, but the idea that I can do it, I have done it. I still get butterflies, but I'm more confident that I can do it because I have done it a number of times now. So that one has definitely been probably my most uncomfortable situation, just speaking in front of people. And like I said, over the years, I've gotten better, but that was one that held me up for a long time. So that one, and what was the other thing you touched on? Um, you talked about public speaking, and I was talking
mm.
too much about public speaking and I forgot the other one that you touched on.
That's a good thing. I was so intrigued in listening to your story. Yeah, just embracing the uncomfortableness,
Yeah,
being being static, not
right.
growing. I had
Yeah.
mentioned, wasting the time on the project at home because I've never done
Oh,
it
oh,
before.
oh, that was it. Yeah, there's a couple of projects same for me that I've got that I'm uncomfortable with as well. And it's probably more procrastination. I know I can do it, but I'm using that as a crutch that I'm uncomfortable with it. Rather than knowing I can get down in there and actually do it. So I'm using that. But it would be, I haven't done it before, so it is something that I would yeah, feel a little uncomfortableness with just because I haven't accomplished it before, even though many people before me have done it.
Right.
Just me
There
in
are
this
there are 12
situation.
examples in the neighborhood, but I'm still hesitant to do it.
Right.
And I know I'm smarter than a couple of them. So,
Yeah, so again, Dave touched on it. It is about overcoming those fears sometime and just doing it. Like he said, he intentionally did it by joining a drama class to help him overcome that. So sometimes it does take a little bit being more intentional about, okay, I just got to do it, got to bite the bullet and just go for it.
yeah. Yeah, and one of the things I think that also helped me and probably you with dealing and accepting and confronting uncomfortableness was the military. They make
Yeah,
you feel extremely uncomfortable in basic training, and even during the normal work days and weeks, there are situations that come up that are uncomfortable that you you cannot back down from,
right, right,
because there's it could involve loss of life or harm to someone or loss of equipment or something catastrophic could happen, and that's where our training comes in, just confronting those fears and pushing beyond being uncomfortable and embracing the uncomfortableness. Like I mentioned, it's like uncomfortableness can be an opportunity for growth, and it usually is.
right. Yeah,
When you come out on the other side, you take a deep breath and you're like, wow, I did that. I did it.
right.
I just did it. And to your point, just bite the bullet. Like we've said it early, some of our earlier episodes, take that first step, be confident, overcoming your fears and just using fear as a motivator instead of as a hesitator.
And I agree with you as far as the military and boot camp. That was one thing that I learned about myself, that I was able to do so many more things when I pushed myself. I was uncomfortable, and like you said, they trained us to that point to where we recognize at the end of it, when it's all over, you're like, oh my goodness, I did all of those things because they put you in that state of pushing past those boundaries, pushing past that uncomfortableness, and doing those things that you didn't think you were capable of. And then again, at the end, realizing I just did that. So what's my next thing I have to overcome? What's my next thing that I'm uncomfortable about, but I know I can do it because I've had this experience. So I think that is a huge benefit to going through that experience, that you did recognize you were able to overcome a lot of those things that you may have been afraid of.
Yeah, it's a confidence builder. I mean, it
That
really
that
is.
yep,
And that confidence comes from whether you overcame as an individual or a team
right,
and you pushed through to meet the goal. And that's what it's
right,
about. I mean, I still get butterflies when I teach in front of people or present, and that's normal. That's
right,
normal. You should feel uncomfortable in an uncomfortable or a new situation that you're not familiar with. That's
right,
what you're feeling is uncomfortable, and you can push through those things. Big crowds or new tasks at work or new projects. That fear of failure is a really big one that people have, and overcoming those those uh, um, objects or challenges is very, very empowering, especially when you do it more than once.
right,
You know, uh, I'm going to use another example from the military. I didn't do it myself, but jumping out of a perfectly good airplane, you know, thousands of feet in the sky. Why? The plane is in perfect condition. It's running. You
right,
you can land. Why jump out of a moving object like that? But they go through a training process to get them more comfortable, to build
right,
up their confidence. And I'm sure that first time is just overwhelming and endorphin rushing and all that stuff. But then after a while, some of these professionals, they have hundreds or thousands of jumps, and there's just like, okay, it's another day in the office.
right.
So what's the next challenging thing? What's the next uncomfortable thing? Is it bungee jumping? I'm not going to jump off a bridge with a rubber band, folks. I'm not going to do it.
Well, Dave, I think again we've mentioned that the military experience has helped with our confidence and overcome things like that. But what if people haven't been in the
I was just
military,
thinking that.
or in a situation where they were forced to overcome things and to push through that uncomfortableness? What kind of suggestions could we give people that maybe are struggling with public speaking or whatever their uncomfortableness is? How can we encourage them to push past that again without the assistance of a military service or anything like that?
That's a great question, Joe. I mean, I think about that sort of thing all the time when I am confronted with something new and I'm uncomfortable
Right,
because sometimes it's something that the military didn't teach me how to do,
right,
and it's like, well, what do I do then? The military taught me how to do certain things that I was uncomfortable with, but I knew what those things were. Now there's something that's totally new, and the military's not there, and I can't rely
right,
upon those things. And I think one of the things that we talked about early on, we've already mentioned, is just take the first little step. Start
yep,
small.
yep,
Start small. You don't have to, if you want to get into art and you want to paint, but you're uncomfortable about painting, start small. You don't have to make a Picasso the first time,
right,
right? Start small. Just learn the basics,
right.
one step at a time, but just take that action to move forward, build your confidence. What are your thoughts? What would you recommend?
And that was actually where I was going to go to, was taking that first step, because we've said it many times before that first step for some people may be running a 10K. That might be their first step. Another person, it may be just taking one step. So it's really defining, again, what your level of success is, and overcoming those uncomfortable things could be just taking that very first step, and that might just be to, in my case, going out to the garage and setting up whatever my project is. Then the next step might be to actually do something. So breaking it down into those smaller steps, and then taking that initial first step and then continuing, and again, not making your steps or your process so easy that you can walk out there in 2 seconds, you're done, and come back in, but rather incremental steps that have some meaning to them. Like I said, going out, setting up the garage, set things up. The next day is actually start to move things or put things in place, start to actually work on. So I mean, just identifying what those comfortable steps would be that would get you, ease some of that uncomfortableness to where you can, feel like you accomplished something, and start to gain some momentum. Because you said it before, it's about building that confidence. And you do that by again achieving those small achievable goals, but not too easy. So
Yeah,
that
that's just what
that
I
would
was thinking.
be
It's this parallels goal setting, something
yeah,
else we've talked
exactly.
about. And, what we talk about in almost every episode, and that's that, intentional critical self-reflection. What am I
Right,
capable of? What
right,
what am I afraid of? So the commitment, and just acknowledging where you're at in your own headspace, but then still
right,
pressing forward, taking action. And that's really what it boils down to. You can commit to something, but until you take action, nothing is
right.
going to be
Yep,
manifested. And that small step may be, just like you said, that just taking one step instead of
right,
running a marathon or half marathon,
yep,
or taking that first breath, or you know walking out on stage for the first time, or maybe it's just standing up in the classroom and speaking to a group or your team, you
right.
know and some folks are that's challenging for them, really. Speaking up in a team environment, they don't want to be ostracized or laughed at, or whatever their uncomfortableness is. Taking that first step, that small step, is huge. I mean, that's the tipping point for a lot of very positive growth.
Right. Well, I just the one you just mentioned about, in our team environments when you're in a meeting with your peers, 10, 12 people in the meeting, and you typically don't say anything in the meeting. But this one time, you know the response, or you think you know the response, raise your hand, or however your protocol is, interject your thoughts, feelings, or whatever it is, your expertise. And again, maybe just a small thing, it may just be a yes, no, and answering yes, that's what I think. So I mean, it is those small incremental um challenges that you face that help you build that momentum, because the next time you might come in and say, well, this is what I found out, this is the prep I based on that last conversation, here's more information about it that supports it, especially if it's something in your wheelhouse, that you're a subject matter expert on, coming back and flexing your muscles a little bit, so that people look at you in a different light. Wow, I didn't know Joe knew that, or I'd like to hear more. So it just building that confidence by, again, taking that first step, and recognizing, even if people do laugh or whatever, you succeeded because
Yeah,
you took that initial first step.
yeah. And speaking of different tools and things that people can take away with from this episode, is if you're still very challenged by taking that first step, find a mentor, find a
Yeah.
coach, find someone who is good at it, and learn from them, and help them learn, help you learn with them. That makes sense, and help them help them to help you to help them to help you.
Well, I mean, that is a good approach. I mean, even if you're talking about a team meeting, and if you got your ally there with you, and you prompt them ahead of time, hey, I'd like to interject here, or that person may be confident enough to say, hey, I got Joe like to share something that we discussed. I mean, just to take the immediate pressure off of you of just jumping out there and throwing something out there, but having somebody that can vouch for you, somebody that can co-sign, that believes in you, will support you however it goes. So I think that's also a good approach to have somebody else help you, like you said, to have somebody help yourself up to, whatever you said down
Right,
that
right.
path. But yeah, I think that's a good approach as well. Somebody else is maybe more confident, but also knows your capabilities, that are
Mhm.
willing to support you, like I say, either however it goes.
So, what about the inverse? Being uncomfortable in a negative place or negative state. What can we do about that?
Mm. Well,
Because not everything is peaches and roses. And
right,
so, what do we do to help ourselves if we're uncomfortable, to be able to step away from that uncomfortableness? We're talking about embracing it, and are you uncomfortable? And it's a positive, but
right.
what if it's not a positive environment? What about those people who are just like, I can't do this job another day, or this relationship isn't working, or this environment is just not right. I've got to find a way out. Being uncomfortable can challenge you.
Absolutely.
How do you take that first step in that case? And that's a challenging question to think about, really.
Yeah, I think it is. I don't know that you can have an exact answer for that because it really could depend on your total situation. Like you mentioned, it may be a job that you don't enjoy doing or you don't like going to every day, but what's your alternative? Do
Hmm.
are you set up to where you can go to another job? Do you have enough savings where you can say, well, I just had enough. I'm gonna, try and find another job. And in the meantime, I am willing to step away from being employed to, so understanding those things as well. Um, Being uncomfortable is a little different when you're looking at how it could affect you financially, your
Hmm.
family, all those variables that you should consider versus just I don't like this person or I can't work here anymore and I'm gone.
Yeah.
So I just think I don't know that you can just tell people, oh, if you don't feel good about that job, just leave because again,
No, no,
people
no.
have
That
different
and that's the
responsibilities.
transition or the segue into, career planning and,
Right. Yep.
intentional, really having those critical conversations with
Yep.
yourself. Are you doing enough? Are you doing everything you can? Or is there something a little bit more that you can be doing? Or, what steps are you taking or are you not taking or that you haven't explored to get you into that position to transition out
Right.
of or into the environment that you want to be in?
No, that's a good point, and I think that's what I was trying to say without again having a plan in place. Because
Mm-hmm.
even if it means leaving that position for another position that may not make as much money or may not be as appealing, but you've established, okay, I can do this for a period of time to move on. But you're right, having a plan in place so that you, even if you feel some slight discomfort as far as finances or just being accepting up
New.
whatever it is,
Yeah.
then yeah, if you got that in place, it still comes down to how long are you willing to do that? I mean, what's your next steps after you make this move? Because it still comes down to your gut feeling, how I, whether I'm working for a company I don't believe in their mission, or if I'm working for a company that my boss is, this type of person, I don't really want to work for that person. Really having a plan in place to consider your options, where you're going to go, what you're going to do in response to that, and that could definitely make you uncomfortable,
Yeah.
whether walk
And
away or stay.
yeah, and you're actually more confident than you realize in those
Right,
situations because you're making the conscious choice to stay in an uncomfortable situation when you don't need to be.
right,
So kind of remap your mind a little bit and think, well, if I've got the confidence or if I'm making the decision every day to stay in this uncomfortable position, why am I doing that? Why not just make the
right,
decision to find a way to become comfortable where
right,
it's working for you? Because if you've done it repeatedly, if you made that uncomfortable decision to be in an uncomfortable place repeatedly, then you've got the ability to make
right,
the uncomfortable decision to get into a comfortable situation
right,
where you are happy and you are in a good spot and you're in a good living environment or good physical state or geographical state or financial or whatever, and you and I have both been in the situation where we've been displaced and had to start over or
right,
involuntarily displaced or the conscious choice to step down or step over
right.
to make less so we could make more or be in a better place in our own mindset, because mindset is an important thing. You've got to have a good headspace. And, making these decisions to stay in a bad place, that's a lot of decision making so that you've been successful at because you're still there. Turn it
Right.
around, make it a positive, make those positive decisions to be uncomfortable in a new place that's a better environment, whether it's a
Eh,
personal relationship, whether it's a team, whether it's a workplace, whether it's whatever. You're already making decisions.
Right,
Just
right.
twist the outcome a little bit of those decisions.
And I know we've talked about this in past episodes, just the fact that again, if you choose to stay at a place where it may not be the best for you, but that's again, you actively chosen that route. You're right. You still have power in that because you've made the choice to stay there just as much as you've considered the outcomes if you leave. But
Hmm.
to stay there again, you've made a conscious choice to do that, and that's what we would want people to be aware of. That if you stay, it's because you've weighed the options, the pros, the cons, and that you figure, okay, I'm going to be uncomfortable, but there's a means to an end. I'm not going to
Hmm.
stay uncomfortable for 10 years because of fear of this or fear of that, but
Yeah, it could be
rather
you've invested so much time and
right,
energy. I failed at it. No, you haven't failed at it. You've learned
yeah,
that this is what you don't like, and that's a good
right,
thing. You know,
yeah,
do you, I read something the other day, and I've read it several times over the years. You don't learn from succeeding. You learn from failing.
right, yeah, yeah, because
Because
you
if you're, go ahead.
yeah, I was just gonna say you learn from the thing you learn just as much from the things that you understand you don't want to do or you
Hmm.
don't want to experience as you do with again being successful in that. So you're right. As long as you understand that you are still gaining by realizing your situation where you are, that's still your measure of success. And success again could be putting up with whatever the
Hmm.
situation is for a period of time to get
Yeah.
to that next level. You just said it earlier. We've taken step back to move forward. And sometimes that is the case when we talk about
Hmm.
our journey is not a straight, up trajectory.
Yeah.
It's left, right, back, then forward, and another two steps back. So that's what sometimes it comes down to. And if
Hmm.
you're willing to accept those things and still continue to move forward, then again you have success because you are learning from those situations, whether you want to be there or not. You're still taking something from that situation.
Yeah. Are you embracing the uncomfortableness as a means to an end, or are
Right.
you just embracing that uncomfortableness because that's what you're comfortable in? You know,
Right.
you've become complacent in that
Yep.
uncomfortableness. So, we would like to hope and think that you're embracing uncomfortableness by choice for a positive reason and for a positive outcome. And sometimes that does mean you have to, suck it up and embrace the suck, as they say in the military sometimes, and just endure that for a period of time because there is an end in sight. If there isn't an end in sight, we challenge you to reevaluate your situation
Right.
because there's positive uncomfortableness and there's not so positive uncomfortableness. And we were hoping that you're focusing on the are you uncomfortable because you can embrace it in a positive way to benefit from this instead of you know put yourself down. And again, making those very tough and challenging decisions to be uncomfortable in a new place or a different environment, different personal or professional relationship, those are very challenging steps. That baby step is just acknowledging that you need that change and then taking action, committing to it, and following through. And
Right.
that's sometimes it's easier said than done because you haven't invested so much time and energy. And but you're not a failure. You're a success because you've stepped away from those environments that are hurting you, versus or taking those steps into those new environments because they benefit you. That's awesome. You know.
Right. Well, again, I think I said at the very beginning when we think about that uncomfortableness, it typically comes with some type of growth, some type of development.
Mhm.
And you said it earlier too, just that because you're pushing yourself outside of that comfort zone, you're not complacent. Your trajectory typically will rise just because again what you earned or gained from that experience. Like you said, the speech thing, public speaking, going to a drama class, and what you gained from that, even though it was probably uncomfortable, what you gained from that was the confidence to be a public speaker, to get in front of people, and that was the helpful push you needed. So that's what happens when you embrace that uncomfortableness and lean toward it.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
and that's the potential outcome that will come from that, even though it may take 10 times in front of people before you actually start to feel the confidence or anything, or 20 times. But the fact that you're willing to move beyond that uncomfortableness to get out there, to put yourself out there, it does get easier every time you do it. So,
Absolutely. Well, we're down to our last couple of minutes here. What would you like to leave our viewers and listeners with, Joe?
yeah, I think we've kind of touched on it since the podcast started, just the idea that, most people like to stay in the comfortable zone, like to, know that everything's status quo. You don't have any big worries. But again, are you doing yourself a disservice by not pushing past that uncomfortability? Just again, if you're, and we use this analogy all the time, if you're in a nice in a boat, and the stream is just nice and smooth and you drift and drift, are you gaining anything by just having that complacent, no movement, or are you setting yourself up for failure because you're not pushing yourself, challenging yourself, and to do something different?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And I don't have anything to add to that really because we've I think we've done a pretty good job. I'd like to think, and we hope that we didn't make any of our viewers and listeners feel uncomfortable. So that's some very dry wordplay there. So with that, we want to thank our viewers and listeners for you know stepping in and listening to another or watching another one of our episodes. We really appreciate your support. Again, we feel if we've helped one person and we've done our job. So if there's anyone that you think that could benefit from any of our podcasts, we've got over 170 of them. Look into the topics that we have, delve into them, listen to them. We appreciate the support. If this is your first time, hopefully you'll come back. If it's your umpteenth time, thank you for joining us. And with that, we always want to end the show with we want you to continue being your not so ordinary you.